Hello and welcome to episode 112 of the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. Today on the show, I am joined by Victoria, who is in my Let's Talk Thyroid community. She has completed my KISS Thyroid coaching program where I got to know her and her thyroid story a little bit better. And she is still relatively new to having a thyroid problem, only diagnosed a couple of years ago and just this year taking control of her own health. So I love, as you know, on this show for my regular listeners, I do like sharing people's thyroid stories as much as we can learn from the experts, and we do. I think we also learn from each other. And the more that we share our stories, the more that we can just spread the word of thyroid health awareness, which you'll see Victoria is already doing that in her community. So if you have joined my community because of Victoria's talking about thyroid health, well, big welcome to you too, all the way from the UK. So yeah, this story is one of a lot of hope, a lot of change, a lot of positive and constructive mindset, and just really some really significant health improvements as a result of the changes that Victoria's made. So sit back, enjoy. Join me at the end for a couple of little KISS Thyroid coaching questions. If you'd like to share your thyroid story on the podcast, then send me a message. Let's have a chat about it, and let's help get your thyroid story out to many more people as well. Welcome, Victoria, to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast, my UK star guest for today. So thank you for being with me and being prepared to share your thyroid story with all the listeners today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I feel really pleased and honoured that you've asked me. So yeah, it's nice just having that connection over the ocean.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I've had quite a few new UK people joining my Facebook group, and I've got two ladies from the UK doing my Kickstart program at the moment, just started yesterday. And so, but even yesterday I was letting more people into my group, and there's quite a few from the UK. So, this is really great. They'll have a nice familiar voice and accent to listen to. So
Yeah, and I've been sharing my story of my connection with you with my UK friends, because I think the more you talk about thyroid, you sort of realise how many other people are also suffering with thyroid. And a friend of a friend has kind of said, you need to go and speak to Victoria because she's made these changes. And I just met up with somebody last week for a coffee, and yeah, your ears must have been burning because we were chit chatting, and I'm sure she did join
your. Just joined, yeah, okay.
She definitely joined.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, thank you for that. And that's part of this, and this is partly why I love to have people share their stories on this platform, because that's exactly what we're doing. Is we're just raising awareness for thyroid health, and the more of us that share our stories, the more people we can help, because there are people suffering out there either who don't know they've got a thyroid problem or don't know that there's anything else they can do for it other than just take their medication. So yeah, you thyroid
absolutely.
advocate Victoria. I'll call you.
Yeah,
Let's Talk Thyroid UK.
Yeah, that's it. But that I think you're right. You start the conversation, and then the conversation continues, and that's exactly what's happened with me. And I have to say, I was all very kind of unaware and head in the sand and just kind of plodding along. And I just it's the modern world. It's 2023, and one day I just kind of thought, I wonder if there's a podcast that talks about thyroid. And sure enough, I searched and found you, and then it goes on, doesn't it? So yeah, I think we all just need to keep sharing, because when you do hear other people's stories, particularly with something like thyroid, there's no two stories the same. So you've got all the similarities and the symptoms that you can kind of talk about, but actually when you start talking to people, they're on a completely different path or stage to you. And some people have been dealing with it for 30 years, and some people have been dealing with 30 days, and we're all at different stages. But I found it really interesting listening to you and then carrying that conversation on, and that's what's helped me ultimately.
That's great. Yeah, and I mean, I guess I've probably been on the receiving end as well, listening and learning from other people. So it's just a good, big community, global community.
Yeah, definitely a community.
Yeah, it is. It feels like that. Well, I hope it feels like that. That's certainly within my little part of that community. I want to create that feel. But even more broadly than that, I think all the people I talk to, or the guests I have on the podcast, and people that I get to interact with are all really lovely people. I think maybe having a thyroid problem just, nice people get. I don't
Yeah.
know. No, I don't want to say
You
that. But
you just
we're
you
all
just
nice
come
people.
with yeah, you just come with a certain level of empathy and understanding, I think, when
Yeah,
you're in the
that's
same
right.
gang.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So tell us, start from the beginning. Like what made you even think you might have had a thyroid story, or start wherever you think the beginning is for you.
Well, I suppose it's slightly unusual in the sense that I didn't really think that I had any thyroid issue at all. It was completely by chance. It was lockdown 2020, and here in the UK, we were allowed to have our daily exercise where you left the house for half an hour. You could go out 2 times a day. And it was a weekend, and we had decided that we would go on a family bike ride. I've got 2 children and my husband at home. And as we were leaving, I just turned to lock the garden gate, and I propped my bike up against the bin. And as I turned, the bike slid, and the gear cog just hit my kind of just above my ankle on my lower leg, and just took a real big chunk of skin out. And there was a lot of blood. And I said to my husband, "You just go. I think I need to deal with this." Anyway, long story short, I ended up at hospital in lockdown, which wasn't great. Um, and they said to me straight away, your ankle and your foot is very swollen. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's nothing to do with what's happened today. That's just a thing that I have. I've spoken to the doctor about that." And they said, "Well, what is it?" And I said, "Well, they don't know. I just have this swelling." Um, so straight away, they patched me up. I'd stopped bleeding, but they said, "We want to keep you in. We want to just double check. It's nothing like deep vein thrombosis." So hours later, they decided it wasn't that. It's fine. You can go home. And I said, "Okay, well then if it's not that, what is it?" And they said, "Well, we don't know either." So it was a bit unusual. And as I say, the swollen feet, the ankles, it was particularly my right one, which is where I had this cut, but nobody had really got to grips with it. And whilst my leg was supposed to be healing, I was having trouble with it, and it kept getting infected. And of course, I couldn't see any GP face to face, so I was doing video calls and holding the phone, down by my ankle, trying to show them on a,
Yeah.
dodgy internet connection.
Yep.
And yeah, a few weeks later, I'd had a few rounds of antibiotics, and it still wasn't healing. And
Mm.
I still had swollen feet and ankles, which I had for, a long time previously. Anyhow, because it wasn't healing properly, the GP said, "I'm going to run some blood tests." And one of those was for thyroid. And she phoned me up and said, "Yeah, you've got an underactive thyroid, and that's preventing the healing. So we're just going to put you on levothyroxine, and away you go," sort of thing. And she said to me, "Have you noticed any weight gain?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Have you noticed any thinning of the hair?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "What about your skin?" And I said, "Well, it's very dry." And she said, did you not think to, raise any of this with us?" And I said, "Well, I'm heading fast towards 40. I run 2 businesses. I've got 2 kids. I think a lot of middle-aged people can probably relate to that, especially women. All of those things, they just tick all of those busy working mum boxes." And she said, "Well, these are all classic signs of an underactive thyroid." I said, "Well, I didn't know." So that was that. But we still hadn't resolved this problem of the swelling of my feet. And
Mm-hmm.
that just continued on. So that was how I found out,
Yeah.
not the kind of conventional way. It wasn't me going to the GP and saying,
No.
"This is how I feel." And,
Mm.
yes, I was suffering all of those thyroid symptoms, but
But
I
you
was just
hadn't
kind of doing,
connected them. Well, you didn't know.
let's
Yeah.
just get
I just
on.
push
Yeah,
through,
that's it.
push on.
Yeah,
That's the
that's it.
challenge, isn't it? Because so many of those, certainly the most common underactive thyroid symptoms is that you can explain them away by so many other things. I mean,
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
I was diagnosed at 23, so different stage of life, but I just put it down to I was finishing my uni degree, I was working a couple of part-time jobs, I was involved in, other things. It was busy, and so I just
Yeah.
thought it was that, I just thought
Yeah.
I'm just busy, I'm stressed, I'm obviously, I put on quite a lot of weight. I just said I was greedy and lazy, which, obviously wasn't true. But,
Yeah.
I could explain it away by so many other things, and so could you. And I mean, the most common stage to be diagnosed is probably my age now, which I'm 49. So it's that perimenopausal stage. And it's, I'm not sleeping well. I've gained weight. Yeah, losing hair, tired, grumpy, irritable, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
you could say that that's menopause. So,
That's
there's
it.
so many different reasons why you wouldn't think, unless you're really
Yeah.
alert to it, you wouldn't be thinking,
Yeah. You
must
wouldn't.
go.
And
Yeah.
no, and when I look back, I can kind of see things, previously as well. When I was, I mean, this might just be coincident, but when I was pregnant with my first child, and my second one, but more so with my first, I didn't have any kind of morning sickness, that kind of stuff, traditional stuff. I really suffered with extreme tiredness. I
Mm.
was so exhausted. I worked with my family, and I remember one particular day I got to work at about 7:30 in the morning, and I just said to my dad, "Oh, I just feel so tired. I'm just going to have a quick lay down while you guys are getting set up." And I laid on the sofa, and the next thing I know, I opened my eyes, and it was 2 p.m. and the house was
Wow.
quiet, and my dad and my brother had gone out to work, and I phoned them up and I said, "I've just woken up. Where is everybody?" And my dad said, "You just looked exhausted, and obviously you're pregnant. We just thought leave you there. We'll go out and get on with the day." And yeah, I had slept. Bear in mind I'd been to sleep during the night. I just got up, got myself ready,
Mm.
got to work, and I went back to sleep until 2 p.m. And that was the kind of tiredness that I was experiencing
Mm.
throughout both my pregnancies. Um, and I remember going to the doctor when the children were probably about, I don't know, 7 and 4, something like that. And I remember saying to the doctor, "I'm so tired." Uh, and what had prompted me to go to the doctor was that I had almost fallen asleep on the drive home from work. And there's a meme that I've seen kind of going around social media, and there's a frazzled looking woman on the end of the doctor's couch. And
Uh,
he's saying, I've diagnosed you, you've got what's known as children. And that was really what the doctor said to me, essentially.
mm.
He said, "You're a
Hmm.
busy working mum, you've got young
Yeah.
children, you're in this stage of your life where you're going to be tired." And there was no blood test done, it was just kind of pushed to one side, and that was that.
Yeah.
So when
Chin
I
up.
look back,
Yeah.
I've had these,
It's
yeah,
very
that's it,
British,
chin
isn't it?
up.
Very British. Come on, chin
Oh
up.
gosh,
Press on.
it was
Soldier on.
so British. It was so British. It was literally keep calm and carry on. That was
Yeah.
it. And and I never pushed for anything more. And I just thought, this is me. I just
Mm.
have to carry on being tired and exhausted. And so yeah, I've suffered with these exhaustion levels for so long.
Mm.
Um, so I don't really know how long have I had an underactive thyroid? When did it
Mm.
kick in? I can't really pinpoint anything in particular, but it was probably about a year to 18 months before I was diagnosed that the swelling of the feet and ankles
Mm.
started. So maybe there was something there that triggered that kind of worsening. Um,
Yeah.
and I would say that the aside from the tiredness and the weight gain, my biggest suffering has definitely been my feet and ankles.
Mm.
In a preventative way. Unable to wear shoes at points. This wasn't just puffy
Mm.
feet. This was,
Yeah, that's a lot of fluid retention. Yeah.
yes,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, nobody had picked up anything. Nobody medical had picked up anything. And like you say, join the dots. If you look back over the years, I've been about tiredness. I've spoken to them about my skin. I've spoken to them about my weight gain. I've spoken to them about my feet. And this is over a long period of time. And any connecting of any dots. And it
Yeah.
wasn't really until this blood test, just purely by chance. If I hadn't have dropped that bike on my leg that day, I may still not know about my
Yeah.
thyroid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a very fortuitous fortuitous fall. It's done you
Definitely.
good. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I needed that. I needed to
You
gouge
needed a
my leg
chunk
that
taken out of
day.
the back of your
Yeah,
ankle. Yeah.
I did. I did. Yeah.
So, Victoria, when you had that, I mean, I'm assuming they just ran the basic sort of TSH test then in hospital, or with the GP after that, or do you know?
Yes.
Did they? Yeah.
The thing that I've struggled with until this point, until connecting with you, is that
Mm.
nothing was really communicated with me. That first conversation I had with the GP when she phoned and said you have an underactive thyroid, that really was it. She asked me if I'd been suffering a few symptoms, and I said yes. And she said, well, I'm going to put you on levothyroxine. You need to take one tablet a day. There was no conversation about what thyroid is, what thyroid does, the functioning throughout your body. There was no conversation about how or when to take the medication. It was just, here's a tablet once a day. You're going to be on it for life. And that was it. So
Mm.
I just felt, I obviously went and got my prescription. I think the only bonus here in the UK that I realised, and again, this didn't come from the GP, this was when I went to collect my prescription from the pharmacist. And she said, you fill in this form, and because you've got a lifelong condition, you'll get free prescriptions. So I thought, hey, winning, that's a bonus.
Woohoo! Yay! I don't have to
So
pay for this medication I've got to take for the rest of my life. Well, I guess that is
exactly.
an upside. We have to pay for it here, but it's not. I mean, if you're on that standard levothyroxine, it's not expensive in the scheme of medications. But yeah,
Not expensive, but
it's
then
not really the
also the
point,
knock
though,
on
is
from
it?
that. It's not the point. But then you get any other prescription that you have for the rest of your life. It's all free.
Oh, right.
Because
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so anything. So
Ah.
and I've realized now down the line the logic of that is because you may occur other health issues because of your
Mm.
thyroid. So that, this is
Mm.
why. But
Okay.
again, that kind of very basic information wasn't relayed to me by my doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, I had my prescription. I had 3 months worth. They said, come back for a blood test. But, I wasn't, I hold my hands up. I wasn't good to myself. I'd suddenly realised that I run out of tablets. I go, oh, God, okay, I must get some of those. And it would be a week later that I'd think, oh, I didn't
Mm.
do that. Okay, right, let's contact the GP. But then it would be another 3-4 days before that prescription was dealt with. And then it would be
Mm-hmm.
another couple of days until I could get to the pharmacy to collect it. So I might have these periods of 2 weeks where I hadn't taken any medication. And then Christmas came around and I was probably on my sort of second cycle of medication and ran out. And again, it was just a busy time. I have a business. It's the busiest at Christmas. So I was throwing myself into work. I was doing long hours, not getting enough sleep, not taking my medication, all of these things. So that first year, I would say, of my medication, I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't good to myself. I wasn't going for
Mm.
regular blood tests. Um,
But you also didn't
and
know that it was important to do that.
no, I
So,
didn't. I didn't. I
so
didn't.
be a
And
little kind to yourself too, because you weren't told how
yeah, and it
yeah.
was at one point, I think maybe the third or fourth round of medication, and one of the GPs, again, not seeing the same person, no consistency, no regular conversations. And one of the GPs had said to me, so when did you run out? And I said, oh, about 3 weeks ago. And she said, you really can't have this happen. You really can't. You've got to be consistent. You've got to take it. And I had a bit of a stern word from her.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I did kind of buck up my ideas and I did start making, my regular blood test appointments. But I was still suffering with just this extreme tiredness and this feeling of, lethargy. I was just really kind of, ugh. And I just went back to the GP and I said, I've still got this problem with my feet. I kept raising it with them. What is this about? Can something be done? I'm still feeling exhausted. Um, is there anything else that you can look at? And I said to them at one point, if I'm taking my medication, shouldn't it be that I'm seeing improvements? And I always got the impression they didn't really know the answers to my questions. And they would, one doctor said to me, oh, it doesn't really work like that. You do.
Gosh.
I thought, I
I'm just
don't
going to
even
put
know
you on
what
this
that
medication,
means.
but not actually really meant to make you feel any better. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. And I thought, if I'm taking the medication, I'm quite a logical person. So I was thinking, logic tells me if I take the medication to replace what my body's missing, then therefore my body should start to function properly. But the functioning wasn't changing. I was still feeling all the same things. And it's, still to at this point, nobody had said the word Hashimoto's to me. I didn't know anything about the autoimmune side of thyroid. That was completely not anywhere in my mind. And I pushed for some further blood tests, and we get results sent by text message. And this one morning, a text message popped up, and it said, "Dear Mrs. Hopkins, your recent blood test shows," and it was, I don't know, something I can't remember, low iron, B12. Next text message came through, deficient in vitamin D. Next text message came through, poor folic acid results. Next text message came through. And there were all these things. And I thought, well, that might explain a few things. So straight away they said, give us a call. And they wanted to put me on iron tablets, folic acid tablets, and vitamin D, and all of these things. So I did that. Had terrible, terrible side effects. Anybody that's taken iron tablets will probably understand. And I phoned the GP and I said, this, I can't live like this. This is terrible. This is, really awful. And they just said, well, you have to, you're low on all of these things. You have to take this medication. And I tried to push on with it, but I just felt really rubbish. And I just stopped taking those. Obviously, I kept on with my levothyroxine, but I stopped taking all those supplements. And then months passed by, and again, I was just, feeling rubbish. And alongside this journey of my thyroid, I'd also entered into a new journey of a problem with my back. And I had developed a back pain in my lower back and sciatica in my left leg. And it was right down to the tips of my toes. And we had problems, here with wait times and trying to get hold of your GP, not having face-to-face appointments, all of the, supposed knock-on effect from COVID. And everything was just taking weeks at a time. At one point, I wanted to have a face-to-face appointment with my GP, and I think I had to wait about 8 weeks.
Wow.
And then I was
Gosh.
yeah, just to have the conversation with the GP. That was all. And then when I finally had that, I wanted to see somebody more about my back pain, and the wait time for that was 16 weeks, just to have an assessment on my back.
Wow.
So this was all going on alongside. So all of a sudden, I found myself in a position where really suffering with back pain, to the point where some days I wasn't able to climb the stairs. My son his school is in the next road to me. I couldn't walk, so I was managing to get to the car and then driving him there. Really the very basic things of, doing the laundry or loading the dishwasher, I was struggling with, and I couldn't cope with the pain. And after back and forth with the GP, I ended up on 3 lots of very strong painkillers. So at this point, I had all the thyroid symptoms, I had the back pain, I had the feet and ankles, and I just thought, what have I come to?
Yeah.
I was
I'm
just
not even 40 and I'm falling apart.
honestly,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
you know, and that was how I felt. And I felt
Yeah.
I'd aged, 40
Mm.
years. And I just was at the point of I cannot keep going like this. Um, and eventually I did get to the point where they were booking in a surgery on my back.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that was going to be months waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, I need something now. And there was a slight, again, it was just one of those fortuitous things that happened. Didn't seem great at the time, but turned out to be great. So January of this year, my appendix burst. So I was taken to
Gosh.
hospital, and I had my appendix removed, and that meant sort of 3-4 weeks just at home off work. And in that time, I discovered your podcast because I
Uh-huh.
had time. I wasn't rushing around working. I wasn't
Well,
doing
thank
all
you,
of the
burst
usual.
appendix, for our
Burst
connection.
appendix. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry you had to
To
go through that
you.
to find the podcast, Victoria, but I'm glad there was a positive outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had these kind of few years of this kind of going
Mm.
downward spiral really, and just getting worse and worse, and struggling, and then yeah, it was really just I thought I need to do something. I searched, the podcasts, found yours, and really just started listening. And when I returned to work, I just plugged my phone into the car and I was listening to every episode. You literally became my daily kind of medicine. I need to listen here. I need to pay attention. I need to start looking after myself. I need to,
Hmm.
find out what all this is about. And I realized, I've been going, that was 2020. So, at that point, it was kind of 2.5 years with
Yeah.
uh, not really paying any attention to myself. Um, and then that's really what the podcast taught me to do. And from there, I joined your Facebook group, and then you messaged, and then we connected, which was it's great because it's changed everything for me.
Yeah. Wow. So what's changed? So by the time you connected with me, you were in that's a pretty bad place to be for a young woman who's,
Mm,
busy and active and, um,
yeah.
you're in it's not a pleasant prognosis, is it, to look ahead and think you need back surgery and you've got, all these different problems. So what's changed? So that was January this year?
That was January
Yeah.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happened this year? To walk us through this year. So you started learning lots from the podcast, which is great, but you've obviously implemented a whole lot of stuff too, because you don't just change by listening. So you've obviously taken a whole lot of
No.
action. So what have you done?
So the thing I kept hearing you saying, and various people that you were talking to on the podcast, the number one thing that kept coming back to me was gluten, gluten, gluten. And I thought, I eat so much gluten. You know, I'm bread, I'm pasta, I'm, all of those things. And when you start looking at what else contains gluten that you wouldn't even think, I found some
Mm.
potato seasoning in my cupboard, and that had gluten in it. And just I thought, okay, yeah, maybe there's something here. You keep referring to gluten, and all these medical people that you're talking to are saying the same thing. So I thought, let's start with that. That's a good start point for me. So it was the beginning of May, and I just cut that out. So I haven't had gluten since then. And you also kept referring to, seeing a naturopath, and I recognise that obviously your information is great, but you're the other side of the world, and if I can find somebody close by. So I found a naturopath just 10 minutes down the road here, and I started working with her. So she went all the way through, my diet and lifestyle and everything.
Mm.
And she set me up a brand new protocol, and this is what you need to do. And at the same time, in fact, I think it might have even been the very same week, the same week that I started working with her, I joined your 8-week program. And the one thing that you kept saying was, are you ready for lasting change? And those words just stuck with me, because I thought, I can't just keep doing, a little thing here and there, or doing a burst of trying to make something work, and then you just kind of push it to one side because life gets busy. So at this point, kind of must have been June time. I think I'd been off gluten for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
Started working with you on the 8-week program. Started working with Claire on a 12-week program, and yeah, it was just the dietary changes. So as well as taking things out, it was putting things in.
Yeah.
So just certain, changing like certain oils that I cook with, and
Mm.
bringing in a variety of, vegetables with different properties in them,
Mm-hmm.
getting that variety, really concentrating on gut health. So just introducing some kind of cultured foods, kefir
Yep.
and kimchi, that kind of thing,
Mm.
which I hadn't done at all. And at the same time, because obviously by this point I'm really getting into, what I can put into my body and take out of my body to help it. I started listening to an audio book, Ultra Processed People. So that was a really, really fascinating read. And I just started cutting out anything that was processed. So really, I've just gone to, whole and natural foods, um, everything from scratch, really. And it's just made such a difference. There's
Wow.
been, there's been weight loss. There's been less hair falling out. There's been better areas of skin, particular areas of skin that were a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Those are either healed or healing. But by far the biggest change has definitely been no more swelling of the feet. I mean,
Wow. Not at all.
I've had a couple of puffy days, but
Uh-huh.
I've certainly I had a holiday. I had a summer holiday in Portugal, and it was very, very hot there. We don't, here in the UK, we didn't get real extreme heat, but it was very hot
Mm-hmm.
in Portugal. And on hot days, I would always get very, very swollen feet.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a couple of days where I did have puffy feet, but again, not this severe swelling. I've always
Mm.
been able to still just carry on wearing my shoes and my flip flops. No problems there. Whereas before, that was a struggle. I
Mm.
was having to wear compression socks, on a regular
Yeah,
basis.
wow. Yeah.
Not had any of that. And
That
I
is
think,
massive because you're on your feet and you're on your feet with your
yeah,
business most of the day, aren't you? So,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's a big
And I
deal.
think I think what that has led to, it wasn't, I don't think it's not just the dietary changes on their own that have helped, but because the pain of in my feet and the swelling in my feet has lessened, I felt able to do a bit more walking. And the back pain just started to go. The sciatica was still there, but not intense, not that huge stop me in my tracks
Mm-hmm.
pain. It was kind of in the background. So because all of this pain and inflammation was reducing, as that's reduced, I've increased the just going out for a walk, and um, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, just gradually building it up. And you kept saying, don't try and do everything at once. That's the point of the 8-week program. Work on one thing, then introduce another, and introduce another. So it's just taking these baby steps really to
Mm.
make small changes. Um, and then a few weeks ago, I felt I was able to start cycling my bike. So I've ditched the car and I'm cycling to work.
That's amazing.
Uh,
I mean, really, from not, being able to put shoes on your
yeah,
feet to cycling around, that's so, yeah,
yeah.
just
I
that's a
think
massive
I definitely
transformation,
think
isn't it?
I definitely feel like getting rid of the gluten made a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Introducing lots of good healthy foods and a range of food, concentrating on my gut health has made a difference. And then in turn, with the pain reducing and then being able to increase my activity
Mm.
levels, of course, that just adds another layer.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, don't get me wrong, there are things I still need to work on. I'm still not great with my sleep. I still need to
Mm-hmm.
give myself more rest time. I know I do. But, old me would have tried to do it all in one go, failed miserably, and then just given up. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
now I'm thinking, I've got these things under my belt. Those other things will come in time. I still have bad thyroid days where I know I've perhaps overdone it, or my thyroid's just not playing ball, and I just feel a bit bleh.
Yeah.
Um, but you've taught me to listen, to stop and listen to myself, to my body, to my symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
and put things in place to help that. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm doing,
Yeah.
really.
And
The
I think
essential
that's
oils, I've introduced that. All of these
okay.
things.
Oh,
It's
cool.
you know
Excellent. Yeah.
lots of
S-
little things adding up to a bigger picture for me.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, isn't it? I mean, it is never one thing, and
Mm,
it just isn't. I mean, you can have one or two, like say the gluten, that usually makes a really significant difference for most people.
yeah,
But even that, and even food in as a whole, is usually a big component, but it's never the whole story. Like it might be
no,
a really big part of the picture, but it's not everything. And so you're right, all these little, what sounds like little changes, but really when you add them all together is a whole lifestyle overhaul, really. Is but done
100%.
gradually is really well, it needs to be done in a way that's sustainable. And it sounds like that you've had that mindset shift and been able to actually take that perspective on
Yeah.
board and make the changes in a way that are sustainable.
Yeah, I think the mindset is a big part of it, and that was what came first for me. It was the mindset.
Hmm.
Just like you kept saying, advocate for yourself. I remember you saying right at the beginning, right, you need to phone the doctor, and this is what you need to say. You need to ask for this blood test. You need to find out if you've got Hashimoto's, which, by the way, I do.
Right.
You
Yeah.
need to you need to find these things out
Hmm.
first before, and then you can start working on those things, and you can start making those changes. And I was terrible at looking after myself, advocating for myself, pushing for correct information. And of course we need the doctors. Of course, if we're sick, we're going to need medications and things like that. But working with you and the naturopath, there's so much we can do for ourselves, is what I've discovered. And
Yeah.
it's all those small changes. Make the small changes, make them lasting changes. you know don't do everything all at once, because I think that's a typical kind of thyroid thing, isn't it? We kind of like want to do it all, but actually and years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I could do it all. My body could cope with those things.
Yeah.
But I've realized now that, okay, my body can't cope with those things anymore.
Yeah.
I can't just do it all. So pace yourself, and that comes with your kind of daily tasks, but also with looking after yourself. Pace yourself, make the small changes, build on those small changes, and hopefully those will be in place for a long time. And I think for the first time in a long time, I just feel that I'm going in the right direction. I'm no longer
Wow.
on this
Yeah.
downward spiral.
Yeah.
Um,
You're
so
winding back
so
up.
yeah,
So that's what it sounds like.
definitely
You've hit
winding
you're
back up.
winding back up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my next step really is to try and concentrate on a bit more sleep, because I
Hmm.
definitely feel the effects when I'm not giving myself enough, and I've learned what I the right amount of sleep for me.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Well, that's good.
so
I mean,
I need to
that's
keep on that.
significant. If you've actually learned how much you need, then you
Yeah,
know now what you
yeah,
need. You've got a yardstick
exactly.
to measure from. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and absolute shocker, but it's probably the same answer as most people. We cannot survive on 5 hour
Mm.
sleep. It's not good for us. We need to reset. We need to our adrenals need to be fulfilled overnight. And I wasn't giving myself that opportunity. And really, uh I was just not helping my thyroid. And yeah, no I still feel slightly cross at the doctors that they haven't given me any of this information, but maybe it just wasn't ever meant to come from them. Maybe I was, I was meant to find you and work with Claire and get that information from somewhere else. So if somebody else gets that information from me, then fine. Like we said at the beginning, it's continuing that conversation all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just hope, I don't see any reason why not. This is, I made those changes back in the beginning of May. Where are we now? October.
Yeah.
I feel like they're all sustainable. All of the things that I've done are
Mm.
sustainable,
Yeah.
and hopefully
Yeah.
that will just make me carry on.
And I can't remember if you said before, but about the back surgery. Did you say?
I actually I cancelled the back surgery. I still have a bit of residual pain.
Yeah.
It's not completely gone. So we've basically swapped back surgery. They've rescanned me, and the compression in my back has lessened.
Oh, right. Wow. That's,
So
gee.
yeah. So we're just going to try a nerve blocking injection just to try and get
Okay.
rid of this residual
Yeah.
pain. But
Yeah.
again, it's not a daily pain. It's an occasional pain. It's not a preventative pain. I know it's still there, and I know what I need to do to
Mm.
look after it and take care of myself and my back and my body.
Yeah.
So I just gonna have this last little bit of medical intervention, hopefully, to deal with that kind of residual pain.
Mm.
But who knows? In time, it might resolve itself even further. But yeah, no harm in trying one more thing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
certainly,
Well, it's,
the doctor kind of poo-pooed it a little bit and said, "Oh, these things do sometimes resolve themselves." But as far as I'm concerned, I had nearly 2 years of this back pain and nothing changed. I made changes and the back pain changed. So I'm going to take the credit.
yeah, totally take the credit. Oh my gosh, you absolutely need to take the credit. I think, I mean, I would hope that over time, that doctors learn from their patients. I mean, I don't know how realistic I'm being with that, but, really, you've made
Yeah.
significant changes and had significant results in a very short period of time. I mean, May's not that long ago. It's not even,
No,
you know, it, it's not. It's not long.
no,
Was it
no,
5
it's
months?
not.
It's not even 6 months or a year. And so, you know, it's
Well,
only going to get better
when
for
I
you.
when I started on your 8-week program, at the beginning of it, you were saying, how do you want to feel in 8 weeks' time? And I was thinking to myself, 8 weeks isn't very long. I can't really see me, you know, feeling much different in 8 weeks' time. But it's just been a gradual process,
Mm,
and then suddenly you look back and you go, well, it's been 5 months, and I'm in a completely different place. And
mm,
I know I've still got more to go. I know that there are still improvements to my health. I know I'm not A1. I just know I'm a lot better
yeah,
than I was 5 months ago.
yeah,
So keep on this path, and in another 5 months, then I might be better still. Yeah. So I don't want to drop the ball on it. I'm focusing on making it my priority, because actually I've realized if I make that my priority, then all the other things do fall into place.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's great. So good. Well, I'm just thrilled for you. I mean, you've put in the hard work, and it is like, let's be real. You wouldn't make these changes if you didn't have to. Like, I mean, I think that's the reality, isn't it? But so it is nice, and people get responses. Some quickly, some more slowly, some's a bit more up and down. It's going to vary. So if you're listening and you don't, it might take a lot longer, to notice some changes than it did, for you, Victoria. But you just
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
and depends how. I mean, there's lots of different variables, but if you don't make some changes, you're never going to know, are you? So, but what have you got to lose?
No. And I think in a way I was sort of lucky that I had like a real visual marker. So the swelling of my feet, it's a
Mhm.
very evident thing. It's right there. It's either there or it's not.
Mhm.
And I think if you're struggling with symptoms like the tiredness and
Mm.
the skin and things like that, I suppose they're not so much. I mean, those things, as I say, I still do have my tired days, and I still do have some areas of skin which aren't great. Um, but that I just don't think they're as clear cut. Um,
Yeah.
you know, as I say, still do have my bad days with the tiredness and things. So I know that there's still more work to do, but I think
Yeah.
because I had that very visual marker of the swelling of the feet, and that was something that was really affecting me daily,
Mm.
and then that's gone. It's almost like, well, I can see a very clear change. So these other things that are still looking slightly murky, I'm going to still work on them because they might
Yeah.
become clear over time. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've had that very short space of,
Yeah, that's a good
I've had
point.
that success in that very short space of time, but then that's kind of given me the boost to think, keep working on the other stuff. So yeah, if anybody else is feeling like, well, I don't have those clear markers, it's all a long game. It's all,
Yeah.
and it's not stop start, it's continuous, so that we can carry on. So yeah, so
Mm.
hopefully in time the sleep will improve, hopefully in time the skin will improve, and I'll have less tiredness. But right now I'm just so happy with the feet and the back.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Victoria, you were the first person to go through my Kiss Thyroid coaching program, my 8-week program. And so, I'm wondering, I mean, you've certainly mentioned little bits of it and, I appreciate all of that. But is there maybe for people that are listening that don't even really know about it, what was your experience of, I mean, working through the program? I understand the changes and things you've already said, but actually working through
Yeah.
the program week by week, what was your experience of that?
So for me, it was just that, the first week, it was almost just kind of like a looking back exercise, and just, I was almost thinking, oh, well, the first week you're not really making any changes, so that's not really going to have an effect. But actually, just taking that time to stop and think about your own thyroid and what's affecting you and where it might have come from and how it affects you. It just puts you in that mindset of paying attention to yourself. And I think that's a really key starting point. So that was
Mm,
good for me to stop and do that.
mm,
And I am very much, I would normally try and do everything at once, get everything done, and then this will be brilliant. And then, as I say, because you can't do everything at once, I would then feel like I'd failed. So just that gradual going through week by week. Some of the exercises were shorter than others. So on the weeks where I'd done a short exercise, I thought, oh, that was kind of quick and easy. But then the next week there might be something a bit more in depth. The food habits, that obviously takes a bit more time. You can't just suddenly switch. You have to look at what's in your cupboards. You have to go and do your grocery shopping. You have to then
mhm,
cook the right things. So that it's not just a 5-minute exercise, that takes time. So having that 8-week period to take those gradual steps gives you enough time to really absorb the information and take it in. And at one point, I think I couldn't find the links in my emails. I had a problem with my emails this end, and I asked you to resend them because I just wanted to go over them again. I just wanted to
mm,
refresh. Um, so it's just that gradual change,
mm.
is I find really helpful. And don't tell yourself that you're going to do it all at once. And don't think that by the end of the 8 weeks you're finished. You're not finished. I mean,
Yeah, you're
really,
really just
the end of
starting.
the yeah, completely. It kind of sounds cliche, but it really is just the beginning, because you're like, okay, well, I've started making these changes, and
Mhm,
don't beat yourself up. There were some things I hadn't quite got to grips with. The low tox living, I hadn't really paid attention to, and I was almost
mhm,
thinking that that's not really affecting me. That's, not something I'm too interested in. But the more I got into it, the more I realized I was. And suddenly be going around the house going, well, this deodorant's no good. I'm going to, look for a good one. And
Yep, yep.
so yeah, just again, it's just that gradual process. I would say to anybody that's thinking of doing it, don't be put off. It's not scary. It's very friendly. You're not going to have to share everything with everybody, and every time you've done something, put it out there to
Mm,
everybody to see. You can just work with you, one to one, and just to take time to absorb the information and make the small changes along the way.
mm. Well, thank you thank you for being my guinea pig. You didn't realize that when you signed up for it.
I
But,
didn't.
you know, it was really lovely to be able to work with you one-on-one and see, when you I think I had that 8-week program in some format in my mind from when I was writing my book. And essentially it's about putting the book into practice is essentially the way I see
Yeah.
the program. And so I've spent a lot of time just in the background mulling on it and thinking, what are the key components of living a thyroid-friendly lifestyle? And so, and I suppose putting it together in my mind and having someone actually work through it, um, but they weren't two different things, but it was really helpful to see
Yeah.
what it was like from your
Yeah.
perspective, because I've been doing all of this for a long time now to varying degrees. I'm on a journey too. By no means have I got everything sorted out either, but you forget some things. You forget what it's like when you're making those changes for the first time. So I've really
Yeah.
appreciated
I suppose we just
seeing
learn
your
from
journey
each
too.
other.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
in
good.
that 8 week period, we learned from each other. I
Mm,
probably learned, I had a lot more to learn. But yeah, you sort of learned from the point of view of how
mm.
is this, going to
Yeah, I
work
did.
for somebody. But
Yeah,
I did. I think that was the thing, the gradual thing over time. Um,
yeah,
it
excellent.
it sounds like a big commitment signing up to an 8 week project, but actually it's not. It's baby steps, and I think that's manageable for everybody. Everybody can do baby steps.
Yeah.
And yeah, just take the first baby step and see where you go.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us today. I know there'll be many people listening to it that will resonate with the things that you've said. So, is there anything, Victoria, that I haven't asked you? You think that you think the listeners need to hear, or any last parting words of
I
wisdom?
I think really that the one thing that I've taken away and that everybody else I think should do is that your own thyroid story really is your own. We are all different. We may have similarities, which you can learn from, and uh, you know, you can kind of be inspired by if somebody else is doing something. Don't necessarily expect to get the same results. Don't necessarily expect to do things in the same time frame. But um, I think it's okay for people just to take their time, listen and learn, make the small changes. You know, if everybody just learns from each other and get the support. In
Mm-hmm.
your book, you have this page where you write down, who is in your kind of support group. I put your name, I put my naturopath, I put my friends, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so people can kind of build their own little community to help them. But
Yeah.
but yeah, just really kind of listen and learn and take the baby steps.
Yeah. Excellent. That's really taking responsibility for your own health. That's really what I hear when you're saying that. It's like you've got to own it.
Definitely,
Own your own
definitely.
story, own your own healing, own your own actions that you're going to take or not take, but own it. Whatever it is that you do or don't do, or your approach you take is yours, and that's beautiful. Like that's your process. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I will carry on with the process. And yeah, I can't wait to get to January, really. I know we shouldn't wish life away, but I remember coming into January 2023 and I remember thinking it's going to be a good year. I'm going to make some changes. I really had no idea what those changes were going to be. Um, and actually, if it hadn't have started with like January, my appendix bursting, and then starting listening to the podcast, I probably wouldn't have made all of these changes. So I
Mm,
kind of went in thinking I was going to do something, but not knowing what. And then fate decided what was going to happen. But this year, I'm looking forward to. I'm a bit more in control, and I'm going
uh-huh.
to start the year with lots of new knowledge, lots of new habits, and hopefully a continuing journey to better health. Hopefully,
Yeah. Well, bring on 2024. This is now your Kiss Thyroid coaching segment where we're just going to reflect for a minute or two on what you've just heard Victoria share. Because, like we said at the beginning, we can all learn from each other's stories. So, was there a particular thing that Victoria said that has stood out to you? Was there a change that she's made to her diet and her lifestyle, or just the way she perhaps has taken that responsibility for her health that is inspiring you to maybe adopt a similar approach or change in your own life? And I'd like to say, would you like to come and do the Kiss Thyroid coaching program with me? Because I would love to hold your hand through that 8-week process where you too could start to implement that complete thyroid friendly lifestyle. As Victoria said, it sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot. It's really about introducing all of the different aspects of that thyroid friendly lifestyle into your lifestyle over an 8-week period. So you're really then set up for long-term success. Uh, as you know, I've said when I was promoting that Kiss Thyroid coaching program, it really is for those who are ready for lasting change. So if that is you, perhaps you even want to look at setting something up for the new year or over Christmas. Could be the perfect Christmas gift to yourself or to ask your loved ones to contribute to. Then head over to my website. All the information is there, and I would love to work with you. And if you're not even sure, if you're not sure if this is the right program for you, just book a free 30-minute chat with me, the clarity call. I'm not the sort of person that's going to push people into doing things that I don't think is the right thing for them. If you're thinking about it and you just want to have a bit of a chat first to see if it is suitable for where you're at, then book that free chat. Love to help you and give you some clarity, regardless of whether or not you continue on to do one of my programs. But even if it just helps point you in the right direction, I'm all up for that. Have a great fortnight, everybody. I will see you again, in my Facebook community, can see you before that, or on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, but back here on the podcast in 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. If you have enjoyed the content, or perhaps you're thinking, oh, my mum needs to hear this, or my sister or my bestie, I would love it if you would share this episode with them. That really just helps spread the positive and practical message of Let's Talk Thyroid and helps that broader thyroid community, our friends and family, to live well with their thyroid health. So you can just, share the episode. If you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast, it's free. It's really helpful because then you'll be notified every time a new podcast comes out, and it just makes it much easier to find. There's usually a little subscribe button or a bell or follow often is the terminology. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be helpful. Of course, if you want to leave a review, even better, just a sentence or two about how the podcast has helped you. You can definitely connect with me via letstalkthyroid.com. That's where you'll find access to my book, my coaching, my freebies, and really everything that I offer in terms of thyroid support.